Welcome to McGuire on Wrestling.
What do you guys want to talk about?
Let's give the people what they want. Professional wrestling.
With Mike McGuire.
The happiest Canadian camper in the world.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Give me a hell yeah.
Hello, first week of December is in the books. We have a lot of wrestling to watch between now and the holiday season, and then a bit of a break for some folks out there, and not so much for others. Still lots to see and do, but I hope it's a good one for you. Welcome to the show. It is called McGuire on Wrestling. My name is Mike McGuire. Every week, bringing this show free of charge on the radio and online. No paywalls, no subscriptions, just something for you to download, listen to, and be a part of. All talking about the world of professional wrestling. Sometimes we throw some combat sports in there. But we talk about entertainment. We talk about enjoying things. We talk about things we like. And we also get some expert opinions on the matter and have special guests as well. We have all of that for you this week as Juventud Guerrera, one of the greatest cruiserweights of all time, is going to be joining us on the show this week. I caught up with him a couple weeks back during a CWE, Canadian Wrestling's Elite Tour. And as you may know, if you've listened in the past, they come through my neck of the woods all the time here. I usually ring announce and host some of their shows. And so Juventud was a special guest star on the tour. Really, really, really different interview than what I was expecting to get from Juventud. And I don't say that in a sense of a negative connotation, but sometimes you get these guys and girls off the road, off the big stages, and sometimes they're a little less than favorable to be around. But I gotta say, especially these ones that come on Danny's tours through the CWE here, a lot of them really down to earth. They get that they're doing something that they love to do, and they get that when they're talking to someone like me on a show like this, that it's not a gotcha interview. It's more of a, hey, you know, what keeps you in this sort of thing? And also maybe shows you a different side of some of the wrestlers that maybe you grew up watching. And in my case, Juventud was one of those guys. I can't believe how old he is now, which you'll find out in the interview. But when he says how old he is, holy, I don't believe it for a second. So we'll talk about some of those things with him. Also, Dave Meltzer is here, and we're going to go through some of the week in wrestling, including some feedback that came back throughout the week on WWE Survivor Series, not just through the shows and through some of the things you heard on the pods on our feed, but also just from our Team MOW McGuire on Wrestling Facebook page, a lot of the fan feedback, and not just our show, but other places too. Was Survivor Series a bit of a letdown? I don't know. That seems kind of heavy to me, but a week later, a lot of fans have had a chance to digest it and think about it. A letdown? I don't know. Was it different? Absolutely, and we'll talk about that with Dave. Plus, we're also going to talk again about the slippery slope of injuries in high-impact matches. We've talked about it before with AEW. We've talked about it with other wrestling promotions throughout the years together. But WWE found themselves in a bit of a position here with three names all going down in the same match. And three pretty lengthy injuries, too. So we'll talk about that with Dave. Plus, after getting some feedback on the page, we'll also talk about TNA and where they seem to be headed going into 2025. That company had an interesting year. They've made a lot of strides in a lot of ways, and also just still trying to get noticed out there in others. Plus, we'll talk about what may be in the future for them coming up with a couple of big dates they've announced. If you don't know anything else about this show, I'm going to give it to you real quick. We are part of a podcast feed that posts every week, McGuire on Wrestling. You can get it wherever you get your favorite podcasts. You can find it all at McGuireShow.com. You hit subscribe, you get this show free in your phone, in your playlist, wherever you get it, each and every week. We don't do paywalls. We don't do subscriptions as far as anything asking you for money. Now, people do offer donations. We say, hey, we'll take a tip. Sure, you can throw that on the PayPal at McGuireShow.com. And it is appreciated, you know, especially this time of year. Just saying. But in all seriousness, we just love being here. Everybody that does a show on our podcast feed or contributes to this show does it for the love of the game and for the love of talking about pro wrestling. In my day job, I am a professional broadcaster, host a morning show out of Lethbridge, Alberta. And because of that, get to do cool things, talk to cool people. One of them, former guest of this show, Johnny Reed, was in town last night. I haven't seen John personally in, oh my God, I think it may have been 8 years. I think it may have been 8 years. We did a Zoom call back in September together, but other than that, 8 years is what I think the time face-to-face has been. We've been through a lot, ups and downs. He's had, frankly, a lot more ups. But at the same time, a guy that's always gotten me, and I feel I've always gotten, and was so great to catch up. And as you heard on this show before, he's also a big wrestling fan. So I think I'm one of the few people that we can actually talk wrestling to each other for him. Because I'm thinking a lot of the people on the Christmas tour probably don't know a lot about the wrestling. Just saying. Lastly, if you want to talk about pro wrestling with like-minded fans, you're welcome to do so anytime. We had a big surge in membership this week on the Team MOW McGuire on Wrestling Facebook group. Invite more of you to join us there and talk about whatever you want to talk about. That's the great thing. Somebody piped up this week saying we don't talk about TNA enough. And trust me, I try to when there's noteworthy stuff going on. Absolutely. And it's not to say that they're not doing noteworthy stuff, but it's just a case of how much engagement, how much interest is there from you. So if there's more interest in TNA from you, if there's more interest from New Japan Wrestling from you, whatever you want to talk about is what we will talk about. And the best part is you use that Facebook page, Team MOW, McGuire on Wrestling, and that gives us all the feedback in the world and helps us steer to what you want to talk about. Like the man said, what do you want to talk about? This week, we talk all about your Survivor Series thoughts again. Plus, we get ready for WWE's Saturday night's main event and why they're making a bigger push this go-round than they have for the event in the past. Also, Juventud Guerrera will be here talking all about his life, his career, his legacy, and what he hopes to accomplish in the new year. Dave Meltzer is on the way, and we ask you, will you be watching the big NBC broadcast this week? Why or why not? That's all on the way, but first, let's get back to it. Some of the biggest stories from the past week. Here is the 5 count.
You want to hear the breaking news?
Well, we found out in the WWE Survivor Series post-show press conference from Triple H that 3 major players suffered injuries in the men's War Games match. First of all, Tonga Loa suffering a torn bicep, believed to be from the CM Punk toolbox attack, although that really could have been from any portion of the match. Also suffering an injury, Jimmy Uso of the Bloodline, reportedly getting a broken toe after his dive from the top of the cage, and Big Bronson Reed reportedly breaking both ankles after his dive off the top of the cage as well. We'll talk a lot more about these injuries with Dave Meltzer coming up. We want to send our best wishes out to Conan, who is reportedly still dealing with several medical issues. K-Dog has been in and out of the hospital recently, and while we don't want to speculate on his health, we do wish him the absolute best. Of course, Conan, a big part of Juventud Guerrera's career as well, and we'll talk about that coming up. But as several outlets have reported the Conan story, we just wanted to send our absolute best wishes. Earlier this week, Fightful reported that Gunther has re-signed a new deal with WWE, and how could you not? This guy is on top of the world right now, and apparently going through a bit of a transition, bit of a face change going on here. We'll see what happens for the World Heavyweight Champion in the future. Of course, he is set to be defending his title against Finn Balor at the upcoming Saturday night's main event this Saturday. Well, speaking of Saturday night's main event, you may be having a bit of trouble watching the show here in Canada due to the fact that it's only airing on NBC and Peacock. Now, if you are a fan of VPNs and the such, you probably know a workaround to get Peacock up here north of the border. But as far as mainstream broadcasting goes, cable may be the only way you get to watch the show north of the border. Current carrier of WWE events, Rogers Sportsnet, has not given any indication that they will be airing the show on their WWE Network service coming up in the next week. And it was also reported this week that former AEW star Penta El Zero Miedo is now a free agent and may be headed to WWE. Of course, there's also a lot of waiting on his brother, Rey Fenix, currently under a deal at least until mid-2025. No news as to what Penta is going to do in the immediate future. However, don't be surprised if you see him on WWE TV soon. You know, this upcoming talent shuffle they're doing seems like a good place to maybe do some things with him. Who knows? We'll see what happens in the next little bit here. You are listening to McGuire on Wrestling on the radio and online. Thank you for doing that. Coming up, we dive deep in all sorts of business with the Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer, plus the Juice, Juventud Guerrera, on the way.
If you're here, you're a part of Team MOW. Join us on Facebook at Team MOW McGuire on Wrestling and get in on the conversation. This is McGuire on Wrestling.
From WrestleMania to SummerSlam to Halloween Havoc to Starrcade, wrestling had its golden era from the 80s through to the mid-2000s. Legends and Champions is where we open the vault. Legends and Champions comes to you as part of the McGuire on Wrestling Network each and every week. Get your midweek fix. You can get it from all good podcast providers just by searching for McGuire on Wrestling. Why wouldn't you? See you there.
It's time for the Wrestling Observer Insider with Dave Meltzer, McGuire on Wrestling.
Well, Dave, we're on the countdown to the holiday season. We're on the countdown to Saturday night's main event and another busy week in the world of wrestling. How you doing?
Really good. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thanks. Pretty good. We had a big concert in town. Guy named Johnny Reed. He's a big Canadian/Scottish artist who also had a big run in country music, and now he's kind of our answer to Michael Bublé. Well, which is funny because Michael Bublé is Canada's answer to Michael Bublé, but does a big Christmas tour. And so he literally got off, this sounds like indie wrestling in a bit, got off of a big show in Germany, hopped a plane, and then played Lloydminster, smaller city. And now he's in Calgary tonight, but was here last night. And also a big wrestling fan, actually. So
really?
It's
cool.
funny. We always have these little, and nobody, like, it's a lot of, like, he would be your mom's favorite singer. You know what I mean? Like, you would like him, but he'd be your mom or your grandma's favorite singer. And that's the crowd he plays to. But so when him and I get together, I'm one of the few people that can just talk about wrestling with him. And he went to WrestleMania with his whole family last year. They really get into it.
Oh, really?
So.
Wow. That's essentially a really wrestling fan. Yeah.
Yeah. I know, they're big time. And took all the kids, and it was great. His wife, maybe not so much, but the rest of them, they have a good time. So we were talking wrestling a bit, and just a lot of the fun stuff going on there. So it's always neat to find wrestling fans of all walks and ilks. So I just thought I'd share that fun little tidbit with you. But yeah, let's start off with the crazy week here. I guess all eyes now for the next big event. Not a pay-per-view, but I guess for a lot of people, as cable diminishes up here, I mean, you can't get NBC without cable really up here. But Saturday night's main event, the next big televised wrestling event for North America.
Yeah, they're going to be doing quarterly, so there's going to be another one right before the Royal Rumble, and just 6 weeks later, I think.
January 25th.
6 weeks later. Yeah, so they'll be doing them basically every quarter, and this is the first one. They're going to go back to a decent amount of nostalgia. Obviously, Jesse announcing at least one match. And I mean, they saved Cody and Kevin Owens for it, which is a big match. It's a pay-per-view quality match. Yeah, I expect a really good show. I expect a really big rating. It was smart. You wait until the major, the big part of college football is over. There'll be some opposition, but not, most of the big schools are playing later in the month. So NBC picks the weekend. It's a good weekend, and should be a successful show. I mean, the WWE TV has been very well done lately, so I have a lot of confidence in what they're doing. Actually, I think most wrestling has actually been. It's funny. This last week, there were, with the exception of Raw, every rating was bad, and all the wrestling I thought on TV I thought was great. So it's kind of one of those things where maybe it's the holidays, maybe there's a lot of different reasons going on. I mean, and there's a lot of reasons for every show. Yeah,
I think that's a big part of it. I think that with a lot of, Christmas parties, work stuff going on, some people taking holidays, I think a lot of viewership takes a hit. A lot of listenership takes a big hit this time of year too.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I will say that the 24th, 25th, 31st, and 1st, which would be NXT and AEW, those shows in the United States, they're going to take major hits. Big, and probably Canada too, but major hits. I mean, there'll be people who will try to jump on whatever the ratings are for NXT and Dynamite those weeks. And it's just don't even bother me with it. I don't care if they're all-time record lows, because Christmas and Christmas Eve and things like that, people aren't going to be watching. Luckily for, Raw and SmackDown, they don't fall on those days. But Raw did really well coming off of the Survivor Series, and a lot of that, I say a lot, but football did a low number, Raw did a big number, and the correlation's perfect, so it wasn't a surprise. And Punk being there, Punk's a draw, and And I thought they had a great show. The Punk Seth and Sami Zayn thing was good, and the New Day thing was great. And like I said, I think that the shows, AEW's just had killer matches all week. Just freaking, it's too bad you guys in Canada are missing them. They're killer matches. I'm not kidding you. Like last night's Collision was a great show. And
I actually watched some of that last night. We'll talk about the setup there because, I'll go ahead and say it. There's no other way to do it up here. I watched it through basically a streaming site because I don't know what the deal is going to be with Max in Canada. I've never asked, because the one thing that I've, with AEW, it's because I usually go away to places that don't have DVRs. So I have to wait till I come home to watch it. But starting January 1st, it's like all AEW programming. I don't got to worry about, I can get it all on Max, wherever I am. So, so I think that's a big help because, sometimes it's not convenient on Saturday night for me to watch Collision live, but at least I can always watch it going forward. I always do anyway, eventually, but it's just going to be much easier. So that's a good thing. Okay, we'll go to AEW in a minute here, but I want to go back last week to Survivor Series. You and I obviously talked about the show. We had my broadcast partner here from my morning show. He went to the show, and he was very ecstatic about it. He has gone back and watched it on TV since. But some interesting feedback coming out of the show as people are taking time to digest it and really sit in on it. Our guys from our alternate commentary show that runs on Saturdays here went as far as to say that one of them thought it was actually WWE's worst PLE of the year. Now,
I don't know about that, because all the matches but the LA Knight match I thought were good. And the women's War Games definitely had problems in the first part, but it had an outstanding finish. But it was uneventful, surprisingly, because all WWE pay-per-views is always like eventful stuff. And the fact is they did really eventful stuff on Monday. They didn't do any of it on the pay-per-view. But I could never call it a bad show. I thought it was a good show, but I did think, like, if you compare it to, their best shows of the year, it will not get any votes for show of the year. Certainly not this year, because this year, man, there have been so many great shows this year. So it's not like, it's a good show. And the thing is, we're all, and I don't want the word jaded, but, there's the deal of, how do I say it? I wrote about it. It's like,
I think the word is spoiled, really. Like we're
spoiled. We get filet mignon all the time, and now it's like, well, we didn't get filet mignon on that pay-per-view. It sucked, and it's like, you know what? This was like 7 years ago. People would look at the show and go, "Damn good show."
Yeah.
But we get so many great shows, and that's the competition with AEW and WWE kicked everyone to where they got to move it up a gear, and also the wrestlers are, we got incredible talent in these wrestlers in every promotion. Even like NXT with the inexperienced wrestlers, they put on a great show last night. I had a really good time watching that one.
My only real concern coming out of all of that, and we've talked about it on AEW shows, so I'm going to talk about it now with the WWE show. We had some big injuries come out of that men's War Game match. And
big injuries.
The biggest one, I think, Bronson Reed, obviously, out indefinitely now with the ankles. Jimmy Uso broke a toe, sure. There's all these other stories of injuries.
The Tonga Loa torn biceps, which I didn't even know about until Friday.
Yeah.
That's like a 7-8 month injury usually. Because he already had surgery. And Bronson Reed, I think, is having surgery this week.
Yeah.
So I don't know the severity of the injury. I guess broken foot. I had a broken foot. Punk had a broken foot. I'm thinking 3 months is probably about right for surgery on that thing.
Well, just going back to the risk versus the reward versus the long-term benefit here. I've been critical about this with AEW when guys do big stupid moves and get hurt. And with the exception of the Tonga Loa thing, because the torn bicep, that seemed like a freak thing more than anything.
That can happen anytime to anybody, and it just happened. Right.
But the other two were jumps off the cage. And jumps off the cage done a million times.
Dude. Bronson Reed's a big dude to be.
Well, and this is what I'm saying. All the kudos in the world to Bronson Reed for showing off athleticism and everything else. But at what point do maybe agents or Triple H himself, somebody got to go up to him and say, okay, you know what? This is all great stuff, but we can't keep doing this.
I believe strongly that he will be never doing that again. I believe that will happen. I think you learn from that. The injury rate, I've been tracking the injury rates for both companies a lot in the last couple of years, and they're similar. WWE has slightly more injuries right now, but 3 months from now it might go slightly in the direction. It's just whatever. But it's like Juice. Juice broke his foot. Juice broke his foot on a sunset flip. You know what I mean? Or not? I shouldn't say broke his foot. I thought that was the original diagnosis. He broke his fibula right above the foot.
Right.
Okay. So, but he got hurt. But it's like a lot of these injuries are just injuries that happen. It's like it's weird. And these guys do death-defying things and don't get hurt. I don't know how Darby Allin walks. I'll tell you that right now. And I watched his match on last night, and it was the same thing. It's just like, how is he getting out of this unscathed? He somehow, I don't know if he's Gumby or whatever, but and he's not immune to it. And I know he's been hurting, but his longevity is like, he is too far, just too far. He's like when I used to watch Mick Foley, and it would be like, please just calm down. And Mick had a great career, but it also ended early. And Darby's, I think, is going to be the same way, unfortunately. But yeah, it's obviously a concern. I think that maybe dives off the top of that cage may not be a great idea. Although, we had two people do it successfully with no injury. One got an injury, but not a terrible injury, but an injury. And then one got a bad injury. Certainly, I would say if you're 270 plus, I would say don't come off the top of that cage. It's too high. Yeah.
Well, it's funny. We had talked about this too. I mean, you made the comparison to Mat Rats last week with the cage with the platform. So clearly, this stuff is designed to make that happen now. But again, I think it's got to be pick and choose your spots and maybe
and the person and you're catching. Like, I think you can do a crossbody with people catching you off the top, and it's not too bad. You probably can do a moonsault block if people are catching you. I think the idea of through the table is not the worst. I mean, if you go all the way to the mat, I think that's not a good idea at all. I think that's going to be hell on your knees. But I mean, there's ways to do it safer. But again, I would say if you're, like I said, if you're a big guy, probably not a good move to do. And I think this is just, you live and learn. And I think the Bronson Reed thing, because that one is like, you know what, that was a bad idea. I know he wanted to do it. You know what I mean? And the guys always want to do it, but sometimes, like they say, sometimes you I think also that every company is guilty of this in the sense of sometimes you got to protect guys from themselves. And I think that everyone right now has been lax about protecting guys from themselves.
Well, again, it's pushing the limits and seeing how far you can go. But again, like we said, I think that throwing a flag on this and saying, you know what, this is our limit now.
Also, yeah. And also, I'd say if you're late 30s and up, don't come off the top of the cage. Late 30s, maybe 40, because again, like Adam Copeland, like the Adam Copeland injury. And look, that guy's the smartest of all. He knows better. But sometimes you just want that moment and everything. And, he's still out of action, although he is cleared and he will be back. I think he's filming a TV show right now. He'll be back when he's done filming the TV show. So he's okay now. But, at his age to have a broken leg, it's not a good thing. So, and he'd been wrestling great. It may not have been giant ratings and everything like that, but I enjoyed every Adam Copeland match, and I loved his attitude, out there with the idea of every match I'm going to do something new that you guys haven't seen. It's like, what guy at 50 that's pro wrestling has that attitude? And he was such a team player. I mean, I think he was just great for that company. But then he got a broken leg from coming off the top of a cage.
Yeah. Well, again, we'll see what happens as more guys come back from injury and more, unfortunately, head on the list. Okay, let's move forward here. You're listening to McGuire on Wrestling. This is Dave Meltzer joining us from the Wrestling Observer and WrestlingObserver.com. Dave, we're going to talk about AEW's big move here to the Galaxy Con with a different venue, kind of a preview of the smaller venues up ahead. But WWE, on the other side of things, is still looking at bigger venues, bigger shows. We did talk, of course, about Saturday night's main event coming up this week, and then the new show announced for Texas coming up in January here. You also mentioned last week about how comps are being less and less of a divided thing backstage because they want to try and sell as many tickets as they can here.
They are a for-profit corporation.
Clear to say we're not anywhere close to the taps run and drive for WWE in selling some buildings out right now, are we?
I've seen some weakness, but I believe that come January with WrestleMania season, that's usually a strong season. So I think that between now and probably the end of April, I think everything is clear. And then at the end of April, we'll reevaluate. But I mean, as far as it'll be it could be an incremental decrease. I do see signs of that, but probably delayed until that point. But incremental decrease is fantastic.
Yeah, but I also see John Cena coming back. So
John Cena's going to be doing about 35 shows.
Yeah.
So that's going to help. And that'll go all year. I think that every show that he goes to, when it's last John Cena match in Toronto, last John Cena match in, Denver, you know what I mean? I think all of those shows will draw very well. So, overall, I think WWE's, they're going to have a great year next year, business-wise. AEW, AEW is a lot of uncertainties in some ways. I mean, in other ways, it's certainties. I mean, it's they are going to have their best business year ever, but do I see any signs of them starting to turn around the live attendance? And no, I don't see that. Hopefully something clicks to where people, just want to come back. But that's the reality right now.
All right, we'll talk a little more AEW and maybe some TNA with Dave Meltzer coming up. You're listening to McGuire on Wrestling. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for listening to McGuire on Wrestling. To be a part of the show, follow our social media or leave a tip. Head to McGuireShow.com. This is McGuire on Wrestling.
Hey, yo, how many of you here came to listen to your same generic wrestling podcast? Or how many of you came to listen to the alternate commentary table every single Saturday?
You're going to get our perspective of what the real fans of wrestling think, and no one does it like us.
Subscribe and stream to the McGuire on Wrestling podcast feed anywhere where you're streaming your podcasts. Survey says one more for the Greek guys.
Chair shot.
Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
Welcome back to the show. Dave Meltzer joining us. Coming up in just a few minutes, Dave, I'm going to bring a name back for you here. Juventud Guerrera. Yeah. Had a chance to hang out with him a couple weeks ago at a live show and just celebrated his 50th birthday. Looks like he's about 25 still.
Isn't that crazy? And Ray's Ray's about to turn next week. Ray's going to turn 50.
Yeah.
Right? 74?
Juventud, a guy who, we'll talk more about him as we get to the interview here, but I was really pleasantly surprised with the guy I got to meet and talk to. So we'll talk more about him in just a few minutes. But we were talking about the injury bug hitting WWE. We were talking a little bit about business, obviously, ticket sales, John Cena's return, all that sort of thing. With AEW now having tickets go on sale for Texas All In coming up, as well as again, moving to smaller buildings all around. We didn't really talk much about something a lot of people have already discussed, and that is moving from the stadium in Australia to a smaller venue now. But this is, I think what a lot of experts are saying is probably the best move AEW can make from an optics and probably a business standpoint as well, as moving to smaller venues, right?
10,000 people in the stadium, there's what, you might as well run an arena. That's how I would look at it. I think that, I think one of the things that I think that they thought is the idea that if we book a stadium, they will come. And it just doesn't work that way. You have to have the, you'll know. Like if they had done this all out show in 2019 or 2020 after the pandemic, so 2021, 2022, it'd have been a successful show. It's right now they're not in a ticket selling mode. They don't have enough the fan base isn't strong enough and willing to fly it as much as it was. And it's a different fan base anyway. Things change. I think that the stadium in Arlington, maybe I'll be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I think it's a bad idea. I think that it'll probably be better if they do the biggest show ever. Go to the American Airlines Arena in Dallas. And if you can fill that up with your biggest show ever, great. That's good. But I don't see like that building would probably hold for a pay-per-view, 12, 13. I don't know that they could get, I think they can get more than 12 or 13 for their biggest show of the year. But, they're looking at 35, 40. Look at the history of wrestling. You don't see that. WWE's done that. Okay. But WWE is a very strong organization. You look at the history of wrestling, 20 is great. And I think that's one of the things that's been so weird is people not recognizing that 20 is great in pro wrestling historically. Mm-hmm. And even if they do a stadium with 20, but if you do a stadium with 20, you might as well just do the arena. It's more cost effective and the sound is better and it's better for the people in the building and everything like that. Stadiums are for when you are, selling out all your arenas, basically. That's when you move to stadiums in my mind.
I have to give a shout out to a podcast listener and a member of our Facebook group. His name is Scott Ainsworth. He's actually in Australia, and he brought this up a little bit, saying that it's hard to get AEW if it's not on live. Dynamite is on during the day. I think what he's saying basically is that just the name recognition value isn't there for Australia like it is in North America and maybe even the UK, but we've seen them struggle even here at home.
Yeah. They're not hot. Even though sometimes they feel like they're, the last time I went to a show, which would have been a show they were in San Jose, and it was not, I've been to cold, I've been to hot, and this was the middle. It wasn't cold. It was, the crowd was kind of into it, and it was normal. It was normal. But, normal isn't stadiums aren't normal in wrestling. You know what I mean? Sold out arenas aren't normal in wrestling. Normal in wrestling is, they, 3, 4, 5,000 and they're doing 3, 3 or 4. So that's where they're at, and big shows are doing more.
We always talk about star power and all these things. I think it's safe to say that sometimes maybe we're a little too hard on the talent from that perspective. I don't think any of this is really an indictment of the talent so much as, again, setting realistic expectations for what regular ticket sales are. And we've seen some record numbers, but again, that stuff can't last here. I want to juxtaposition what's been happening with AEW going from, larger to smaller venues here. And we had someone named Tina who joined the group this week, and she's wondering why we're not talking about TNA as much. And my response is always the same. It's like, it's not that we don't talk about TNA, and we're going to talk about TNA right now. TNA has seen some exceptional growth as far as reaching out to fans, getting ticket sales for events. They do a very different.
They had 2 strong shows. They had Montreal, which was PCO selling lots of tickets and local wrestlers selling lots of tickets, and they had a nice turnout in Detroit. Aside from that, it's 1,000 people and less.
But they're doing it in a way, I think that. And to play devil's advocate here, I think they're doing it in a way that suits their size. Do you know what I mean? Like they're growing.
They're not. Well, they're taking a big risk running these buildings. UBS Arena, I think, is. Again, that's next year. It's a long ways away. Yeah. Maybe they'll do something that gets hot. But to me, UBS Arena, that seems like a really big ask for them. I think it's a mistake. Just like I think the stadium for AEW is a mistake. I don't think the stadium for Toronto is a mistake.
Right.
And I think that AEW, if AEW would have run their first show ever at the stadium in Toronto, I think it would have been a fantastic event.
So you're a little ahead of me here because TNA announced a poll they were going to have between their fans as to whether they should go to New York or LA, and then they announced that they were going to do both next year. And
the poll is obviously a sham because you don't book buildings, snap your fingers. You know what I'm saying? Those buildings were probably booked months ago, and it's like, hey, how can we do it? And then we'll just go at the end and say, you pick both. So
I'm not here to bring credit. I'm not here to bring credibility to pro wrestling right now, Dave.
Okay, I think that it was a clever promotion, but obviously, with the benefit of hindsight, you can see that they had already made their decisions. They were going to run both, and they're running both in substantial arenas. The LA arena, the Galen Center, is not gigantic.
Right.
If TNA was going to run its biggest show of the year there, it would have been a stretch, but I wouldn't. It's not impossible. UBS Arena, and I know it's New York and everything. Maybe people will just go, hey, there's the UBS Arena. Maybe we'll check it out. It's something big, but it's that's a risk.
And for those Canadians listening or any hockey fans, that is where the Islanders play. So that's going to be an interesting show. But
TNA is not an NHL-sized arena promotion by any means possible. You know what I mean? AEW for a TV at the UBS Arena would probably do right now 4,000 4,000 to 5,500 for a pay-per-view. They'd probably get in the 10 range, maybe a little less, probably 10. But TNA's, that's a big step from AEW.
With their recent relationship with WWE and NXT specifically, do you think maybe for that UBS Arena show they lean on that a little more and maybe some NXT people show up in there?
Yeah, but that's not going to make a difference. I mean, they better. Yeah, of course.
What if a WWE main roster person makes an appearance there?
Main roster would help to a degree. To a degree. But I mean, look, NXT, which is bigger to WWE fans than TNA, they had Randy Orton, St. Louis, Missouri. They had to move from the arena to a small building because they didn't sell any tickets. Even last night, they didn't have any main roster people unless you consider like Ridge Holland main roster, which I don't think people do, even though he did have a long stint there. But it's like they did not draw well at all, and they've got Lowell coming up, which is no advance there either. So I mean, one of the things that I think that has been missed in all the anti-AEW stuff, in the sense they can't draw, is that if you look at the ticket sales for every show in this country, okay, WWE is good. NXT, their advances, bad. TNA, bad. AEW, bad. And New Japan, bad. So it's like people are basically going, it's like WWE main roster is the major league. And if you have anything else, you're not drawing well because the pool of people right now, they're willing to go to see, raw, WWE television. That's and pay-per-views. That's what they're willing to see. And they're not willing to spend high ticket prices or, you get so much free TV. That's the other thing. You can't keep up with the free TV. Why go to the arena? That's the reality of the business right now. I mean, like all the stuff about AEW is accurate, but nobody, for whatever reason, seems to look at the big picture and see like, oh my God, it's the same for everybody other than Raw and SmackDown.
Well, we will see what happens. I mean, the argument can always be made if you have an NHL team versus WHL team in your town, who do you prefer to go see? And there will be the diehards that say, I want to go to both. And there will be the ones that say, I like seeing the young names. And then there will be those that just care about the stars. And that's kind of the way it goes for everything. But
right? Most people fall into I'm going to go to see the stars. Mm-hmm. There are exceptions. And that's the people that are going to these other shows, Yeah. That's they're those people. They're the people who go to see the AAA hockey or whatever it's called.
Nobody's right or wrong either. You go to what you like, you vote with your dollars, you support what you like, and you enjoy wrestling. That's really what it comes down to.
It's always been like that. I think people forget, like they'll remember the Monday Night Wars, and you got to remember that the Monday Night Wars, your challenger brand, WCW had Hulk Hogan and all these guys. If you had a team in your market, and you had freaking a past their prime Gretzky and people of that level all on the minor league team, you probably would draw pretty decent for the minor league games. Yeah. But as a general rule, you're not gonna. And I think that's what people kind of are missing right now is that period of that few year period was an aberration. And the early part of AEW was probably because WWE creatively sucked and people were just looking for an alternative. And now that WWE is good, AEW is struggling, and there's a lot of factors to it. But it's like if AEW was the only one struggling and TNA really was like drawing like 7,000 or 8,000 at their shows, or NXT was drawing 10,000 at their shows, I would say, man, AEW, there's something wrong. But it's like it's the whole business. That's just what the business is this right now, and it's historically that's what the business usually is. Not always. We're not at a period where, like we were in the late 90s, where just the idea of wrestling is hot. What's hot now is the Bloodline storyline. That's hot, but it's or CM Punk, you know what I mean? Or John Cena, and maybe WWE main roster brand. I would say that's what's hot. Wrestling is all over TV. People see it so much. They see so many great matches. It doesn't move them because I could turn on TV Saturday night and see matches that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you never see a sniff of on television. You never got matches like that on TV. You got squash matches. I suppose if all TV was squash and then you had to go to the arena to see good matches, maybe people would be going to the arena more. But guess what? TV's where the money is. So that mentality that people sometimes go, we should go back to that mentality. It's like the economy's changed. It's all about the TV. It's not about the house shows. AEW is probably going to have their their worst year next year for house shows, and they're probably going to make more money than they've ever made. Well, they're for sure 100% going to make more money than they've ever made in their history next year, too.
That's it. The dollars have shifted. All right. Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer and WrestlingObserver.com. You were listening to McGuire on Wrestling. I asked you a little bit before. I want to go into it before he joins us on the air here right away. But Juventud Guerrera, just on the road up here in Canada. He's back down in Mexico, running his own promotion with his family down there. Him and I have been in contact since, and I've been watching some of it. I don't know if you've seen any of it, but if not,
I have not seen his promotion, no.
I'll send you a couple links here. It's interesting. It's very Mexican TV style. There's a lot of extra graphics, a lot of stuff going on, but I'll send you a link. You can let me know what you think. But for those that are new to wrestling, because we have new generations of fans listening all the time, if you don't know anything about Juventud Guerrera, especially from the early days and his resurgence in North America, or I should say the rest of North America, the United States and Canada, but coming out of Mexico, the ECW and, of course, WCW days, this is where this guy really took off and shone. Well, what can you tell us about Juventud from a wrestling standpoint?
I started watching him when he was a teenager in Mexico, live, because they had Fuerza Guerrera and Juventud Guerrera against Rey Mysterio and Rey Mysterio Jr., who's the current Rey Mysterio, and the original Rey Mysterio was Rey's uncle. And they had a great feud in Mexico. And then, when ECW wanted to focus on Rey, I mean, the two guys, the obvious guys were Psicosis and Juventud to be opponents because those were Rey's best opponents. They were Psicosis and Juventud Guerrera were sensational workers and sensational with Rey in those days. And then, he went to WCW and he could have been a much bigger star there. They didn't really get how to, really market the Mexicans whatsoever. And by WWE, I don't know, I think there was a typecast thing at that point, unfortunately. Super talent, though. Like, as an actual wrestler, from day one, this guy could wrestle. I guess his dad might have trained him or something, but his dad was a great, great wrestler. And he's actually, I think, better than his dad was. Although his dad in Mexico was a much bigger star. But he got derailed by coming to the United States. And then in the U.S., too small, Mexican, can't do promos, blah, 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 blah. And it hurt where he could have been, but that was the mentality in the 90s.
Do you think there would be a value to bringing a resurgence to guys like Juvi and Psicosis and stuff like that, with WWE now starting to focus on some WCW talents of the past? And I'm not saying that you need to bring them in for matches and stuff like that, but definitely getting them on the nostalgia brand and getting them into the video games and maybe the action figures.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that, or I think that, like, if they did an angle for him in NXT, it might with somebody like Javon Evans, it might be cool. Main roster, I just think that ship has passed.
He might say otherwise here. We'll find out as we talk to Juventud Guerrera in just a few minutes. But Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer, thank you as always, my friend. What are some things people can read about in the latest issue?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a bunch of big stuff. I mean, the Vince McMahon, the Ring Boys lawsuit was put on hold, and big stories as to why and how that all went down. And, that was, then, obviously full coverage of Survivor Series, coming out of Survivor Series, a lot of backstage stuff at WWE as far as future direction stuff. The week before was freaking probably one of the best issues of the year, because I had a lot of history and things like that, going through some wrestlers from the past that passed away and just going through their careers. That was really fascinating.
There you have it. Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer and WrestlingObserver.com. Thank you very much, sir. We will talk again next week.
Okay, have a great week.
Coming up next, we go one-on-one with the juicy one. Juventud Guerrera is on the way.
This is McGuire on Wrestling. If you like McGuire on Wrestling, you need to subscribe to the free McGuire on Wrestling podcast feed. Not only do you get access to the show a day early, but you also get free bonus content every week. Share a laugh with Mitch and Dimitri on the alternate commentary table.
Oh, I'm Cody Brown. Look at me.
Now, if this was Damian Priest, he'd apologize.
He probably would have apologized.
Follow along with the film career of one of wrestling's biggest stars with We've Seen a Movie.
Basically, I'm just watching John Cena play his wrestling character.
If John Cena was a raging alcoholic Atlantic City mooch before this.
Get all these shows, exclusive interviews, and more for free by subscribing to McGuire on Wrestling, wherever you get your podcasts. Welcome back to McGuire on Wrestling.
One of the greatest cruiserweights of all time. It's a pleasure to actually see in action. Juventud Guerrera, pleasure to meet you, sir.
How you doing, my friend? Just great to be here. Very blessed, very happy to be hanging out with the boys of CWE, with Danny. And well, this is my second tour actually my third tour, because the first one was on 2019, and then the pandemic happened. I came back on September, and now this November, which is always close to my birthday. On the first tour, I was having my birthday on the road. So
when's your birthday?
In November 23, in like 2 days.
Wow. Well, happy early birthday then.
Yeah, thank you.
You had a match tonight against one of the hometown guys here in Derek Cross. We were talking before, trying to figure out if you've been to Medicine Hat before. I guess maybe on one of those earlier tours with Danny, maybe?
I think the first one. I think we hit this not so sure about the venue, but this town, yes.
I try and convey to people to listen, because we got listeners from across the country and around the world to listen, and I try and convey to them how this little town of Medicine Hat, where it's not like the biggest city, but man, they get a pretty great crowd for indie shows here. What was your impression of the audience here tonight?
Oh, I enjoy it, man. I enjoy it so much because you just go with the flow, and then they just want to have fun, So you just go with the flow, just have a plan to have fun, but when you actually have more fun, it's even better, You feel like you're not working, You're just happy to be here.
Well, admittedly, I've been a huge fan of yours since WCW when I first got introduced to a lot of luchadors, like a lot of people did actually from those days, and ECW, of course, seeing those matches. But a lot of fans saw you recently, probably on the biggest international stage, would have been with your AEW appearance against Chris Jericho a while back here. You're still in there. You're still going hard, too. I don't want to out your age completely, but it's safe to say it's been a minute since you were in WCW, but you're still looking pretty good in there.
Oh, thanks so much. Yes, I gotta keep it juicy because it's a hard business, and once you getting mature, and I think I think that's what I've been doing. I've been getting mature. I've been taking care of my body more than I used to. Time pass by and you learn, right? So by timing, I've been learning how to keep myself healthy and still looking good. And like you say, it's very important to look good. And so if you look good, you can look good. And my goal is still going until I can get another chance, but properly, because that was just like a one show, and that wasn't good enough for me, and I believe for the fans too.
I liked introducing you tonight as the one, the only one, the juicy one. The juice is still flowing. Are you amazed how long the juice has stayed among fans?
Yes, that was a big statement, right? From WCW, from the name, from my other name, which is Juventud Guerrera. It's actually, it means John Warrior, so it means pretty much the same than juice, in a different way, in a different version. But it's something that you just gotta keep going. You just gotta put yourself, and then just enjoy life. And like I say, now I enjoy it a little bit more mature. Now I'm building my own company in Mexico.
Oh yeah.
So it's not just myself now. I got a big responsibility, because with power comes a lot more responsibility, And now,
very Uncle Ben Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my word, and that's what I've been learning from. I'm a second generation wrestler, and even when my dad is. We have a long story, my dad and myself, because we don't get along too much in the ring. We have a few. Actually, was one of the real good original feud that son against dad, right, in Mexico. We did a Triple Mania in I think 2000. I forget the year, but that was Triple Mania 16 or something like that. Anyways, and I mentioned that because I'm gonna be facing my dad on my next show, which is in December 7th. And people can watch my shows on Fight TV. And
what's the name of your company?
La Super X, La Nueva Lucha Libre. Okay. It's a long name because it used to be like just La Super X or Super X, and then I put La Super X and then La Nueva Lucha Libre, which means the new Lucha Libre, right? Mm-hmm. And then with the Grand Prix Championship Wrestling, which stands for GPCW. So I got the GPCW since my first show when I started running my first show in 2003, and that show I brought Marufuji and Kenta for the first time in Mexico.
Wow.
So I made out that belt, the GPCW Championship belt, and now I'm the champion of my company. So check this on YouTube. You can see my shows on La Arena or La Super X, which is La Arena is LAARENA, La Arena, and La Super X is LASUPEREX.
We'll put links on all this for people to check it out too, absolutely, so we can make sure people see it. I had some experience down in Mexico years ago. I've told this story to our listeners a few times. I work for radio stations, and we've taken like station vacations down to different places in Mexico and that sort of thing. And my goal was, while I was down there last, was to make it to a AAA show. Unfortunately, I was in Puerto Vallarta, and the closest one was in Guadalajara, and I was not going to make that trip. So I ended up actually finding a guy. And I don't know how in tune you are with the indies down there, or what it's even called, but he's a little, I always say he's a little teapot of a guy named Javier, and he wrestled as El Forajido.
Okay.
And anyway, he was working as a vendor selling the masks, you know, like you guys have all the knockoff masks, I say, are down there, but I mean, I started asking by name, and I actually asked for like yours and Santos and, you know, all these other guys, and they're like, you know, Mexican wrestlers, because usually Canadians come down and we're looking for one with like a CFL team embroidered on a Rey Mysterio mask or something. So I ended up actually booking a wrestling show at the resort. And I got these guys paid like a few $1,000s. It was awesome, like they, you know, because we had a bunch of people on vacation and stuff like that. But what was the eye opener for me was just, I mean, how hard of a scene it is to come up as a wrestler in Mexico. Like, they brought their boxing ring in, and then they had the cushions from the lounger chairs, you know, at the pool, and that's what they used for a mat. An old Corona thing. I'll show you pictures when we're done here. But I mean, this was like legit Mexican indie wrestling, and that's where a lot of Mexican wrestlers really get their start and cut their teeth. Like, he was showing me pictures of him like working with El Dandy. You know, he's a jam up guy, and other guys like that. But you know, he was just showing me his history, and I'm just wondering if there's anything you can convey to fans out there that maybe only saw you in your American debuts in American wrestling rings, and just what your upbringing in wrestling was before all that.
What do you exactly mean?
Well, I'm just wondering, was it like that for you when you first started? I mean, you did start obviously pretty young, but was it like the rock hard boxing rings and just wrestling anywhere you could, or how was it for you?
Yeah, exactly. That we always go through something like that, you know.
Yeah.
One way or another, and plus in Mexico, because we just we're hard workers and we find a way to make it happen. Yeah, I went to quite a few gyms that they don't have a ring. They have fucking mats, and you have to go there, and the people were training there, and then so that's how you make it, you know.
It was amazing because he would tell me how they would have shows in like some of the bullfighting rings and the pens and stuff like that, and just amazing scenes. So I got to learn a lot from Javier and his guys that came in, and it was really, really cool experience. So I'm not saying this just to butter your bread. I'm sure you get a lot of people that throw compliments at you, but just seeing where you came from and getting to experience just even a touch of that for a second. They brought in their ring. It was in terrible shape. I actually went to Home Depot in Puerto Vallarta and bought a bunch of tape and pads and everything and fixed their ring up for them that day because it was unreal. But to see that, to have the international success, and to see you still going now, I mean, even on these frigid Canadian tours, we got snow coming down like crazy. What keeps you inspired to stay in shape and stay in the ring?
I'm a believer, so I think I God deserves all the glory, all the everything that I do, because I just think if somebody see me and say, "Oh, why?" It's because I'm a believer. I think I have a passion for what I do, and I always praise the Lord Jesus Christ, and He's been helping me in very, very dark moments when I was gone, when I was thinking that my career was going to be the same, because because different stories, in the past, but more likely it's just terrible injuries that the doctor told me that I was gonna be gone and couldn't be walk anymore, and just to have a strong mind with Jesus and His word, His statement, His teachings. It make me the person that I am right now. So I'm still learning. I'm still on the way, but I feel more comfortable now. Everything is possible with the help of Jesus Christ.
And that's great to hear, too. I mean, I don't know you at all until today. And again, seeing the way you were with the boys back here, and obviously been on the road, the fans were loving you. But, I mean, there were times where we knew there was some trouble in your life and things weren't always going your way. I didn't realize that the injuries had gotten so bad, though. Yeah. So, I mean, kudos to you for being able to get better. And it seems like you're in a really good place now, man.
Yeah, I feel great, actually. Like I say, I'm still learning the teaching of God, and I think everybody does, in this life. So I think it's I feel wonderful, I feel young. I don't feel that the age that I'm gonna be, in this couple of days. It's incredible, So
do we want to say the number?
It's 50.
Yeah, that's it. It's gonna be 50. Yeah. So, you don't look it, man.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's an amazing thing. So, yeah, I'm gonna keep walking. I'm gonna keep rolling. So you might as well gonna see me on a major company soon. So that's my goal, and I know I can accomplish that. And it's just timing for now.
Do you think possibly, because we're starting to see this now with WWE and the new ownership with TKO, there seems to be a new level of reaching out to alumni and legends and people like yourself who have been in the company or been in WCW before. There's actually a big WCW resurgence now. It's the latest downloadable pack on their video game. And I've been wondering, with all this WCW stuff, when are they going to start bringing in the luchadors, So has there been any thoughts to that or any approach yet? Or is that something you would like to see happen eventually? I mean, obviously you would.
Yeah,
but...
exactly. So like I say, it's just timing. It's just the right moment, the right momentum. And I think I'm going into that direction because, like you say, everything is changing to a different path. So I think I'm going into a good direction for that path.
I'd love to see it, man. I'd love to see a Juventud Guerrera action figure come out in like 2025 or something. And I got to say, man, you really did impress me. I've seen a lot of wrestlers through the years, and I've seen a lot of guys come on these tours, and most people are really happy to do it. You can get the occasional person that's not all 100% with it, feeling the vibe, but you seem to really give it your all out here tonight. So I wish nothing but the best for you and continued good things, man.
Thank you so much.
I could say like best wishes, but I mean that's so silly. But
same to you, man. I feel your vibe, I feel your energy.
Yeah.
Same way to you, to your family, to the whole thing, everything you do in life, and the people who are listening to, same way to them too.
Juventud Guerrera, absolute pleasure. Do I qualify as a juicy boy?
100%.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There you have it. Great guy. And again, if you want to follow any of Juvi's indie work down in Mexico with his promotion there with his family, follow the links in the profile for this week's episode at McGuireShow.com or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll see the links for La Arena there. Well, there's some music I never thought I'd be talking over again anytime soon, but this Saturday, it happens, Saturday night's main event. So I put it out to you, the MOW faithful, on the Team MOW McGuire on Wrestling Facebook page. Will you be watching Saturday night's main event live on NBC? We go around the world on this one. First of all, Douglas saying, unless I get offered overtime at work, I'm going to watch it live. Andy Evans, our man in the UK, says, absolutely, this seems a better show than Survivor Series. Michelle going to be watching some indie wrestling, so she'll miss it live. Matthew says, though, if he can find a stream for it, because he lives in Canada, he's going to try there, as well as Craig says the same thing. He says he's going to watch it if he can, but not sure how he's going to watch here in Canada. Yeah, again, you're going to need cable or NBC to watch it legally, and however else you choose to watch it, that's your business, not mine. But we will talk about the show next week. Until then, I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode of McGuire on Wrestling. McGuireShow.com is where you can go to support everything. Until next week, thanks for listening, and letting me do what I do. Play safe, drive safe. Be senior.
McGuire on Wrestling. Online and on the radio. Listen to the show Mondays at 4 p.m. Mountain Time at CKXU.com, wherever you get your podcasts, and at McGuireShow.com.